Do you ever feel like your managers are doing a good job, but you know they could be doing so much more? Perhaps they're handling the basic responsibilities, but they're not really stepping up and owning it in the way that you need them to. Or maybe you feel like you've got bad managers in your business and you're worried about the impact on the rest of the team. Well, in this episode, I'm going to walk you through the key steps that can help your managers transform from just doing their job to really becoming real leaders. We're going to dive into everything from setting up the right meeting rhythms like one-to-ones and performance reviews to teaching them how to take full ownership, not just for their own area, but for the success of the business as a whole. And we'll get into how you can empower your managers to lead by example, raise risks, solve problems, and coach their teams. Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual. A common problem for business leaders is hiring and training managers. Often, managers are promoted into their role because they're good at their job, which may not include any management experience. Suddenly, they're responsible for managing, coaching, training, and supporting a team of employees. They should be turning strategic plans into individual objectives, holding their team accountable, supporting them in removing obstacles, tackling poor behaviors, and praising them when they do things right. The reality is often far from this. Many managers are terrible, and that explains why the most common reason for someone leaving their job is because they don't like their manager. And the second most common reason is that they aren't growing in their role. So your managers have a big responsibility. And if you feel like employee retention and morale is a problem in your business, improving management is one of the biggest levers that you have. When your managers are performing at their best, everything else just starts to click into place. The team become more engaged, problems get solved faster, and most importantly, you don't have to micromanage every little thing and get involved as the leader. Now, this is going to involve a mix of giving them clear guidance on what being a great manager actually looks like, setting up the right rhythms and structure, and empowering them to take ownership, not just for their own areas, but across the business. So there's a lot to unpack, but let's dive in. First off, let's talk about mindset, because when you're developing your managers, and particularly when they're making that shift from just doing the job to being a manager, they need to make quite a shift in their mindset. They need to understand that their role isn't just about doing the work themselves, it's about coaching and guiding their team. And that can be a huge shift for someone who's used to rolling up their sleeves and getting into the nitty gritty. But if they're going to succeed as managers, they need to take a step back and focus on enabling their team to thrive. It's that classic working on the business, not in the business idea, but applied to management. Next, we need structure. So one of the first pieces of structure that you need is regular meeting rhythms. If all of your managers aren't already holding weekly one-to-ones with their direct reports, that's a red flag. Because those meetings are where alignment happens, where they can tackle any roadblocks before they become big issues, and where they can focus on developing their team skills. Now, you shouldn't stop there. Every 3, 6, 12 months, whatever's right for your business, there should be some more formal performance reviews or coaching sessions that provide longer check-ins, which are the perfect time to dig deeper into progress against longer-term goals and give constructive feedback and set new objectives. Now, I've worked with businesses where they have got some managers who are doing those regular one-to-ones and getting great results. They've got some managers who occasionally do the one-to-ones, but it's a bit more ad hoc, or it's maybe not weekly, or it's kind of just been booked as and when. And then some where they're not doing it at all. And it's amazing to see the difference in performance that each of those managers are getting. And I ran a workshop for a particular management team where that was the case. And one of the big realizations for them was actually we should be much more consistent in the way in which we're managing, particularly because we can see what works, and we should be doing that consistently across the business. Now, in terms of those meetings, what should they look like? Within my businesses, we tend to keep it fairly simple. For the weekly one-to-ones, the agenda might consist of first starting by reviewing the current week. What's gone well? What's been a challenge? How are they feeling overall? Then checking in on personal and professional development goals. Are they on track? What can I, as their manager, do to help them? And then finally, setting priorities for the coming week. What needs to happen to keep everything moving forward and remove these blockers and so on. That's the one-to-one structure, and it's pretty simple, and every time it's the same, but the discussion we have is different. Where they're at, what they're worried about, the blockers that they need help removing. Those will change, but the structure is the same. And that's really powerful rather than the manager just showing up and going, so what should we talk about? Or the employee thinking the manager's going to just launch into, here's an update or whatever. You want that structure so it's very focused on actually achieving something, removing blockers. And that's really powerful for the manager as well. Because that's often something I hear is people say, oh, I haven't got time to have all these one-to-ones. And the reality is you haven't got time not to. Because the alternative is lots of ad hoc conversations or not getting results out of your team. Those one-to-ones are a perfect opportunity just to keep going, get the alignment, and avoid having to have lots of meetings throughout the week, but also helping them actually remove blockers and make progress on their biggest goals. Now, for the performance reviews or coaching sessions, it's a bit more in depth because we're talking about long-term KPIs, what skills they need to develop, what's next for them in terms of career progression. It's all about making sure that they've got the support and the feedback that they need to grow, not just as workers, but as future leaders. So it's worth having some kind of process, a checklist that can be followed for performance reviews. And in our businesses, and we have templates that we use with our clients, we have processes for essentially a self-reflection that's done by the employee themselves as they prepare for that performance review, which includes reflecting on their own performance, their job satisfaction, any feedback they've got for their manager, and then identifying what their personal development plan looks like, what their career goals are, as a result, what actions they're going to take. And then we have a checklist for the manager to follow to prepare a performance review based on that input, plus feedback from others, plus their own observations, so that they're completely aligned on that employee's performance. Now, we tend to do that quarterly. I know most businesses don't do quarterly performance reviews. They perhaps do them annually or, frankly, not at all. The reason that we do them quarterly is because we use them as a personal development tool. They are so powerful for making sure that people are continually supported in their growth, but they're also great for the managers because we're able to address concerning behaviors or performance early. We're able to be super proactive, like a performance review I did within the last quarter. Actually, everything was great. So instead, a lot of the things I was highlighting were, here's some things that potentially could go wrong or some risks that I'm seeing. And so let's make sure those don't happen. And so it's really powerful to make sure that there isn't a big problem or that you're able to address problems really, really quickly. So those are powerful, those one-to-ones and those performance reviews. The next thing to do when supporting managers as a leader and setting them up for success and getting the most out of them is actually observing them. Like, watch how your managers behave and particularly make sure they're leading by example. Because one of the biggest things that you want to see from your managers is that they're modeling the right behaviors. If you want a culture of accountability, they need to be accountable. If you want enthusiasm and buy-in to your company's vision, you need to see that they're excited about it too. And if they're not, you've got a problem. I've seen it time and time again when there's managers who don't embody the company's values or don't demonstrate the behaviors that you want to see. It has a ripple effect across the team. And I remember even in one session talking about how shit falls down, right? Shit performance at the manager level just has a habit of going all the way through that team. And often you'll see that as if you've got a team that you're particularly concerned about. Often it's because the management not only isn't strong, but also is demonstrating the wrong behaviors. Maybe it's a NIMBYism, not in my backyard, essentially. Oh, I don't want that in my department. You can do it somewhere else. Or attitudes where it's like, oh, that's not my job, or that's not my team's job. Those kind of attitudes, when they're demonstrated at the management level, tend to ripple down across the team. And so then you end up in a really painful situation where you feel like you've got a whole team that is a problem for you. So make sure that your managers are aligned with the vision, with the strategy, and that they're fired up about where the business is going, and they're demonstrating the behaviors that you want to see. Now, of course, it's not all sunshines and rainbows, and it's not just showing up and being excited and everyone goes and everyone does a great job. Sometimes you also need managers to tackle tough issues like managing underperformance or behaviors that just don't fit with the company's culture. And you don't want them to shy away from this. And so you want them to be demonstrating those behaviors as well. They need to address it head on. And the best way to do that is early and with plenty of clarity. You don't want small issues to fester. So help your managers have those difficult conversations in a way that's constructive but firm. And make sure they're balancing that with plenty of public praise for team members that are doing great work, and making sure that even with those poor performers or where you have concerns, make sure that you're catching people doing things right. Because often people find it more easy for them to see what they need to be doing if you're emphasizing and praising the things that are being done well, rather than constantly just picking up the things that they're not doing right. So make sure that you as a leader, but also your managers, are doing that regularly, that they're praising others and also picking up on concerning behaviors and poor performance and creating those redirects nice and early. Next thing I want to cover is ownership beyond their department, because one of the biggest traps that managers can fall into is thinking they're only responsible for their own department. Wrong. As a manager, they need to understand how their work fits into the bigger picture and take responsibility for the success of the business as a whole. This means they should be stepping up when things go wrong, taking accountability for it, sharing their successes, but it's not just about their team's KPIs, it's about the collective success of the management team. And so you need to be encouraging them to support other managers in achieving what really matters in the business, rather than just making sure they've ticked their own boxes. Of course, they do need to be accountable for those, and you don't want to see them blaming team members. They need to be handling performance, but also taking ownership of it. But that's one of those behaviors that you've got to help managers to shift in, to take on, and you should be praising them where you see those examples across your management team. Speaking of ownership, one of the other things that you really want to see from your managers is that they're challenging plans and that they're raising risks nice and early. You want your managers to feel comfortable flagging issues when they arise before they become major problems. And the more transparent they are, the better. And this is where creating a culture of openness really pays off. You want those managers to feel able to ask questions and clarify their understanding, to challenge if they feel like a vision or a strategy isn't going to get the desired result, or isn't exciting enough, or is too ambitious and unrealistic. You want them to feel able that they can share that, have that discussion as a management team, get agreement, and then go back to their team all excited and clear on what needs to happen and clear on how they need to manage their team to deliver it. You don't want them to be sitting there quietly, and I've seen this in leadership team meetings where the CEO has presented, here's the vision, here's the strategy, here's what the next 3 years looks like and the goals for next year and so on. Any questions? And all the managers go, nope, all good. Okay. And they start to move on. And I was essentially a consultant or non-exec director in that business. And so was actually supporting them as part of resetting up that management team. And I paused them and said, just before we move on, just to check, this morning we've been talking about the role of the management team and the need to clarify and challenge and so on. And everyone goes, yeah, okay, fantastic. And so as a result, before we move on, everyone has just said, yep, they completely understand this. They have no questions. Great. Fantastic. Which means that you're all presumably excited and ready to go and communicate this to the team. Fantastic. Yeah, everyone agrees. One question. At the very top here, we've got a top line revenue goal, top line profit percentage goal. That profit percentage goal, is that net profit or gross profit? Or is it an increase on the existing profit? And is that a percentage increase on the profit, or is it a cumulative on top of that? And there was silence, and everyone has this moment of realization of, I don't actually know what that means. I don't know the answer. I'm not sure. Which means that of course they can't communicate that, and they're not really thinking about how it relates to them. If there's going to be a change in the profit, does that mean that they're reducing their cost, or just growing revenue, or even increasing their costs? That matters for those managers, and they weren't really thinking about whether they understood it and how they'd communicate it. Now, as soon as that realization came in, they then asked loads of questions, not just on the profit figure, but everything. And it resulted in really great feedback into the CEO that was then able to go, oh, that's a good point. And maybe that one actually isn't ambitious enough, or maybe this is too unrealistic. And they're able to tweak it until they got a management team that were 100% behind that vision and clear on what does this actually look like. And they made changes so that that was the case. And so as a leader, you need to catch those behaviors where your managers are just saying yes and agreeing. They need to be able to challenge and ask questions and communicate it back to you and be able to explain how they see the wider vision relating to their part of the business and what that means. So make sure that you're not tempted to fall into that trap of, oh, well, I've shared it. Everyone said it's fine. No one has any questions. Therefore, it must be fine. My experience is that that's normally the opposite. Make sure that they're asking questions, get them to play it back to you, and encourage them to have that open culture that it's good to challenge and ask questions, because you want that in your management team meeting, not when they're back with the team. You don't want them back with the team going, yeah, the leadership's not clear on what they actually want from profit. It's like that is a responsibility for those managers, so make sure they're doing that. Finally, and this is a big one, is that you want your managers to be coaching and empowering your teams. And this is a big one because this is something that is probably one of those classic, oh yeah, we just expect this from managers. And yet it's a really big shift and one that many struggle with and are given very little support for. In my experience, the best managers are the ones who don't have all of the answers. They're the ones who ask the right questions and they help their team to come to solutions on their own. Yet you've probably promoted someone in the team who often is the one who has all the answers and solves all the problems. So you need to encourage your managers to use open-ended questions in their conversations and to facilitate team discussions in a way that encourages problem solving. And I covered that in episode 136 of De-Stress Your Business. I talked about how to use facilitation to support, to empower teams to solve problems. So do share that with managers to help them to use what I covered in that episode, the bungee of intervention, to use the right level of direction with their team to empower them. Because when you do that, you empower the team, but also you'll start to see real growth in the team members, and which supports you with succession planning, but also means that that manager your whole business doesn't end up relying on that individual manager, which is a real risk. If you end up with a position where your best team member becomes the manager, and then that manager either can't be promoted or can't move across anywhere or can't leave the business or be on holiday or whatever, because the team falls apart, that's a problem. So make sure that you're coaching the managers on how to do coaching. So to wrap up this episode, if you want to get the best out of your managers, start by establishing a solid rhythm of communication. Make sure that they're aligned with the vision, encourage them to take ownership, and empower them to lead by example. The easiest way to do all of this is to give great guidance, particularly through manager onboarding and processes that your managers should be using. Most businesses don't provide anything in the way of this, but we've got some great templates that you can use. Just email me, alexis.kingsbury@airmanual.co, if you'd like to get these, because we've literally got processes for one-to-one meetings and actually manager onboarding and all sorts of different areas. So please do get in contact. But if there's one key thing I want you to take away, is that you as leader, you should make it easy for your people to be great managers. Because when your managers succeed, typically, the whole team succeeds. Thanks so much for listening. If you found this episode useful, then please do subscribe. Make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes. I've got some great episodes coming up, particularly on supporting managers and make it easy for them to do a really great job. And if you're listening on a podcast platform such as Apple or Spotify, please do me a massive favor. Just leave a 5-star review. Each one makes a huge difference, because although we get many, many, many listeners and people say lovely things to me, particularly when they see me speak at events, they come and say, oh yeah, I've been listening to the podcast and I've binged a load of episodes, which I massively appreciate. Please continue to do that. And yet they won't have done a 5-star review for me. And honestly, it makes such a big difference. So please, please do that. Otherwise, until next time, have fun.